Tell me if it's on. We're here in Ottumwa. I'm with Amy, and we're about to go address a town hall. You're welcome to join us. Zach is introducing us right now.
Replenish our energy because it's time to get started with the campaign. They also asked me to do a little bit of an introduction. And I'll start by saying that when I heard that Beto O'Rourke was running for president, I was a little skeptical because I thought this is a guy from El Paso. Nobody around here heard of him until last year. But I saw something else, and I saw that right away he hired Norm Sturzenbach to work for him in Iowa. And Norm was my first boss when I had a job in politics. He's a really smart guy, and he's what I'd call a serious dude. So I thought, if Norm's going to bet on this guy, he's probably got something there. So I watched a little longer, and I saw two things. The first is that this guy stands on more tables than anyone I've seen. We don't have a table here. I think he'll still be comfortable. The other thing I saw is that he does have a campaign that's based on some really good ideas and ideas that are worth talking about. I know this week he put out some ideas about protecting the right to vote, and it's a broad plan. It gets at keeping political influence out of the census. It gets at gerrymandering. It gets at fighting back against these Jim Crow voting laws like the voter ID and all these things. And so I'm really excited today to welcome Beto O'Rourke and his wife, Amy.
How's everybody doing? Good to see you. Good to be with you. Buenas tardes. It's an honor. I know you all know how to say buenas tardes. Y buenos dias, for those who are just waking up. Huge honor to be with you. This is our 5th visit to Iowa, and I can already tell it's going to be the best one yet. And I know it's going to be the best one because it's the first one on which I'm joined by my wife Amy, who's here with us. First time for her in the state of Iowa. And before I get a chance to listen to you and have a chance to respond to your questions and hear what's on your mind, I wanted to introduce you to my wife Amy. She got in last night after a delayed flight. I flew in this morning from Atlanta, so we've just been together on the road for the last couple of hours, and I wanted to have her speak for herself, and then she'll turn it back over to me, and then we'll turn it over to you. So, ladies and gentlemen, Amy O'Rourke.
Good afternoon. Really all I wanted to say was that for me, I'm so excited to be in Iowa this weekend. When I was able to during the Senate race, I would join Beto. Sometimes I would travel alone. Sometimes we would bring our kids with us. And it was the most amazing experience to travel across the state of Texas, meeting people, hearing from them, hearing their stories. and to be able to do that in Iowa with Beto this weekend, we're bringing our kids this summer. Just really looking forward to meeting all of you, getting to hear your stories, and being here today. So thank you for such a warm welcome, and looking forward to answering any questions that you all have at the end of this.
Thank you. Can we turn it down just a little bit? Back there. Thank you. Appreciate it. So, thank you for making some time for us. Zach, thank you for the introduction, organizing everybody. Representative Mary Gaskill, thank you for taking some time to be here. Mary, thank you so much for your public service. We are grateful to you. And I had a chance to meet somebody who ran for elected office in 2018, might be considering doing so again, Mary Stewart.
We love Mary.
Well, she was here earlier. Yeah. She's out campaigning somewhere. She's back here? Okay.
Hi, Mary.
Thank you, Mary. All the way in the back. I see you now. Yeah. So look, we are facing the greatest challenges of our lifetimes. Anything that you choose to look at. We think about healthcare, the inability for so many of our fellow Americans to afford a prescription. Even those who have quote-unquote healthcare or insurance cannot, in too many cases, afford the copay on their medication. In our home state of Texas, we lost a school teacher to the flu in the wealthiest, the most powerful country on the face of the planet. Now, as part of her job, she was guaranteed insurance, but she was not guaranteed health care. She had the flu, but she didn't have the $119 in her checking account, which is what her copay cost for the medication that would have saved her life. We are learning from people that we meet in Iowa and all over the country that though insulin was developed 97 years ago in Canada by scientists who sold it back to the Canadian government for $3 Canadian with no hope or prospect of profit. They just wanted to save the lives of their fellow human beings. It is now being sold back to us here in the United States at rates so expensive that folks who have insurance are rationing their care, not taking all the insulin they need to be alive, and they're dying of diabetes in the year 2019 in this country. You look at immigration, in this state as in mine, you have hundreds of thousands of people working some of the toughest jobs anywhere in this country, sometimes for minimum wage. Far too often, their immigration status used against them as leverage to pay them a fraction of minimum wage. Amongst those are dreamers who number more than 1 million strong in this country, who live in constant fear of deportation back to a place whose language they probably don't speak, where they no longer have family or connections, where if we deport them there and they're successful against those long odds, they'll be successful for that place and that country, not Iowa, not Texas, not the United States of America. We know that we need immigration reform to do what is just and right and in the best traditions of a country of immigrants and asylum seekers and refugees. We just need to find the political will to do it. I think about these trade wars that our president has entered us into. Your state feels them more than any other in the country. These markets for the soybeans and corn and pork that you raise and grow and process here in this state, those markets that you and those who preceded you worked your entire lives to develop are now closed to you by this president, and he's about to close another one in Mexico. The tariffs that he threatens to impose on Monday will shut down the #1 destination for what is grown here in the state, that pork, those soybeans, and that corn. That hurts farmers and rural communities, but it also hurts jobs right here in Ottumwa. John Deere is going to have a really hard time staying in business under this current economic climate imposed by this president. And then perhaps the greatest challenge that we face, climate. Knowing full well that the floods that you've seen in this state, the droughts in my state, the fires in California, they were not caused by God, nor by Mother Nature. They were caused by us. Our emissions, our excesses, our inaction in the face of the facts and the science and the truth. That's what's produced these disasters, and they will pale in comparison to what we will see down the road. Actually, let me correct myself. What our kids and our grandkids and the generations that follow us will see down the road. Unless we take this opportunity, the 10 years left to us, to free ourselves from a dependence on fossil fuels, to put farmers and ranchers in the driver's seat, to pay them for the public service, the environmental service of capturing carbon out of the air and sequestering it, more of it in the soil, taking global leadership to ensure that we do not warm another 2 degrees Celsius. Every single one of these challenges is going to take every single one of us and every single thing that we've got. We cannot meet them by half steps or half measures or by only half the country. And our work at this moment is cut out for us because this very polarized country is being further divided by this president every single day. And this already fragile, damaged democracy, bought and paid for by the highest bidders who have corrupted and corroded our institutions to their own gain and benefit, is being further undermined by this president who will stop at nothing to take on more power for himself. That is why, as Zach said, we introduced just this week a bold set of proposals to fix our democracy. There are 3 main tenets. Number 1, let's bring more people in. Our plan calls for us to register 50 million more voters over the next 4 years. And if a significant percentage of them turn out, by 2024, we'll have 35 million new votes being cast in that important year. We also make sure that there is same-day and automatic voter registration. And for the very youngest among us, we will pre-register you at 16 and 17 years old to vote, so that when you turn 18, you are ready to go and fully participate in our democracy. Second pillar, let's remove any obstacles to the ballot box. My home state of Texas ranks 50th in voter turnout, not by accident, but by design. Not because we love our democracy any less than you do here in Iowa. And believe me, by this 5th visit, I know how much you love democracy here in Iowa. We love it just as much, but we were literally drawn out of our democracy. Based on race and ethnicity and country of national origin, people were drawn out of a congressional district. The power of their vote diminished. The ability for us to hear their voice completely canceled out. Voter ID laws that say that you can use your license to carry a firearm to prove who you are at the ballot box, but you cannot use your student ID at the University of Texas at El Paso to prove who you are at the ballot box. We will implement and vigorously enforce a new Voting Rights Act to make sure that there is no longer manipulation of the voter rolls. There's no longer voter suppression in this country. We make Election Day a national holiday so that everyone can fully participate, and we remove those barriers from each and every single American. And then lastly, third and perhaps most important, let's restore trust and faith in our elections, and by extension this country and our democracy. First and foremost, we are going to invest in election security. We know, though the president still refuses to admit it, that we were invaded by a foreign power in 2016. That invasion, our president sought to cover up and obstruct the pursuit of justice so that we could get the facts and the truth and prevent this from happening again. Our administration will invest in federal, state, and local elections to make sure that your vote and your voice is not manipulated. We will require either paper ballots or paper receipts for every ballot that is cast, and we will audit the elections that we are holding in this country. Next, we're going to end gerrymandering, the practice by which members of Congress choose their voters instead of the other way around. We're going to get big, unaccountable corporate and special interest money out of our politics. No more political action committees contributing to members of Congress, because it turns out that members of Congress disproportionately spend their time with those PACs and those corporations and those special interests. Let's return focus and power back to people. And speaking of that, term limits for every federal office. If we really believe in one another, then we should be able to believe that after 12 years, our leaders should be able to get out of the way and be succeeded by somebody else who will bring a new perspective, a new set of life experiences, a new set of expertise to bear on the problems and opportunities of this country. And it's term limits not just for senators and House members, but also for U.S. Supreme Court justices. 18 years, if there's some regular turnover in the highest court in the land. If we do this, we bring everybody in, if we repair this damaged democracy, I am confident we will be able to meet any of the challenges before us, and this country will be able to fully fulfill its potential and its promise. That's why we're here today, to listen to you, learn from you, and include everyone in the conversation so that in our administration, we'll be able to serve everyone in this country. Thank you all for having us out here today. Very grateful. Cynthia O'Donnell, who is wearing orange, to focus us on gun violence today. We lose more than 30,000. In fact, the number's almost approaching 40,000 of our fellow Americans to gun violence. She's trying to call our attention to gun safety legislation. So, Cynthia, thank you for wearing orange. Thank you for having the microphone. She will bring it to you if you raise your hand. Ma'am.
Yes. Hi, my name is Jackie Lauer, and I live in Davis County. You know, it's against the law to leave a dog in a car in the summertime. Wouldn't you think that it is akin to attempted mass murder to leave children in a van for 39 hours? That's.
Are you talking about
And
the
what
treatment
can-
of
And what
children?
can be done about it? I mean, what can be done about the mass severe child abuse? I don't care where they came from. It's child abuse, and a child is a child and should be cared for.
Over the last year, more than 6 children have lost their lives in our custody or our care.
And the last one was covered up.
The last one was covered up. It was actually only thanks to the press, the best defense against tyranny, not the enemy of the people,
That's right.
that we learned that this had happened. And a death in our name for which we are responsible and accountable going forward. And we will be until we put an end to this. Let's remember that these kids are fleeing the deadliest countries on the face of the planet. There was a 3-year-old child who showed up in a cornfield just outside of Brownsville, Texas, last month. And that child only had the clothes that were on his back, and on his sneaker was written in permanent marker a telephone number to be able to connect him with relatives or care deeper into the interior of the United States. No parent, no mother would ever send her child on that journey unless that were the only way they could save that child's life. These are really desperate conditions in these deadly countries right now that are forcing people to do this. So let's do this. Let's never again put another child in a cage and deport their mom back to the country from which she fled in the first place. Let's reunite all those families now. Let's make sure that we treat our fellow human beings with the dignity and respect that they deserve as human beings, and ensure that we follow our own asylum laws. And then let's do this. Let's go invest in reducing violence in Guatemala, in Honduras, and El Salvador. Let's work with other partners in the region so that no family has to make that god-awful decision to travel 2,000 miles or to send their child on that journey. It won't be through cages and walls and cruelty and torture and this inhumanity that you describe. We have to live to our best traditions and values, and that's what I want to do as president. Thank you for asking the question.
Hey, I'm really happy about your plan for voting and getting everyone registered and all that. I'm worried and scared about the Supreme Court in the state we're in today. The last nomination was scary, it was brutal. So I was wondering if you had a plan to combat people basically holding nominations hostage and then forcing their nominations to limits.
Yeah. In addition to this presidential election, and ensuring that everyone in this room, myself included, if I'm not the nominee, get behind whoever the nominee is, and ensure that she or he is as successful as possible against Donald Trump, and then as successful as possible in bringing this divided country together again in January of 2021. We need to make sure that that next president has a Congress with whom she or he can work with. And so Mitch McConnell must be, if he's to remain in office, the minority leader in the Senate. Effectively stripped President Obama of his last year in office, denied him the ability to have a Supreme Court nominee, though he was duly elected by a majority of his fellow Americans and the Electoral College, unlike our current president. And the same Mitch McConnell says that he will not hold this president, Donald Trump, to the same standard.
No.
And he'll allow him to make a nomination up to the last day of his administration. And so, and I know President Company understands this, but it's a point that bears repetition. This is not a pox on both houses. There's no false equivalency between Democrats and Republicans. My mom is a lifelong Republican. So there are Republicans whom I love in this world. But those Republicans who enable this president and are complicit in what this administration is doing, not just locking up little kids, but describing the Klan as very fine people, or immigrants as rapists and criminals, or talking about banning all Muslims from setting foot in this country, or entering us into these disastrous trade wars that are punishing the people of Iowa and all across this country. they have some culpability and some responsibility for what's going on. So yes, let's make excellent nominations to the highest courts in the land. Let's set term limits for that Supreme Court to reduce the temperature and the political pressure around these nominations. But let's also have a Senate that we can work with. And the people of Iowa, as do the people of Texas, they have their work cut out for them, but we must be able to do that if we're going to be able to achieve the potential that we've described today. Thank you for asking the question. Appreciate that. Hi there.
My name is Carmen, I'm 16, and I just wonder, what do you think of the dreamers?
Yeah, Carmen, thank you for asking the question. This is a question about dreamers, and what do we think about those dreamers, and how do we make sure that we live up to our ideals and our traditions in this country. And what I think is so exceptional about the United States is that unlike almost every other nation on the planet, we have chosen not to define ourselves by ethnicity or race or common ancestry or genealogy. We just said that all of us, wherever you came from, are created equal. And the idea is to equal potential, equal opportunity. We, more than any other country on the planet, will enjoy the genius of the people of the planet who have found a home here, including more than 1 million dreamers who came here at a very young age with their parents through no fault of their own, and now here in our communities are every bit as American as the 3 kids that we're raising at home. And to think about deporting more than 1 million of them back to their countries of origin, where we will lose out on everything that we've invested in them and lose out on the full potential of their lives, the genius that they will reveal, would be akin to shooting ourselves in the foot. That's why I say, let's permanently free those dreamers from any fear of deportation by making them U.S. citizens in this, their true home country. We, the people of the United States of America, will enjoy the benefit of everything that they do over the course of their lifetimes, something that you can measure in the billions of dollars to the positive to our economy, and those things that we cannot measure, the quality of life that they will improve, the families that they will raise, what they contribute to a deeper understanding of the American story. So that's what I want to be able to do for the Dreamers. Thanks for asking the question.
I'm sorry, I'm not standing, I'm handicapped. I'm Dennis Wagner from Ottumwa. One of my big concerns is that, I know it's inadvertent, but one of the elephants in our closet is that when you listen to Democratic rhetoric, many people feel that our only approach to getting rid of an unwanted pregnancy is abortion. In the meantime, we have many parents who want to adopt kids that have to go through all kinds of red tape. I think what I'd like to see is us become pro-choice in that we support a woman's right to abortion, but at the same time, if the woman chooses to carry the baby to term, we'll provide the support to do that. I'd like I'm going to support the candidate that talks about pro-choice. All choice is not just abortion. I think the other thing we can do is get on board and support the legislation to, which is bipartisan, to improve access to contraceptives.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks. At a time that Roe versus Wade is under attack, unlike any year since 1973, I think it's really important that we define healthcare not just in terms of primary healthcare or specialty healthcare or mental healthcare, but healthcare also meaning that every woman is able to make her own decisions about her own body and has access to the care that allows her to do that. And that is complemented by what you just described, full funding for our foster care system and removing the red tape and the bureaucracy and the costs associated with being a foster care parent or an adopted parent for a child who needs a home. In my home state of Texas, Child Protective Services, CPS, was so badly funded recently that you had kids sleeping in the CPS offices, on the desks and under the desks. Y además, in addition, in Texas, I don't know how it is in Iowa, but by law you can be too gay to be able to adopt one of those kids. We legally discriminate against parents who would offer a loving home to one of those kids who needs a loving home. So I'm with you. We've got to be able to support our fellow Americans' lives at every single stage of their lives. When they're kids, when they're in the foster care system, and those families who want to be there for them. But I will tell you as president, not only will we ensure that our nominees to the Supreme Court agree that Roe versus Wade is a settled law of the land, we'll work with our colleagues in Congress to establish by statute that no state can exempt itself from offering full reproductive rights and care to the women in that state. We will repeal the Hyde Amendment, and we will roll back the gag order to make sure that a woman's health and her body are paramount in the medical decisions that we make. Thank you for the question. Appreciate it. Yes, Ms. Connell.
Hi, I'm Rocky Soloza. I'm a truck driver for FedEx, and I've been a third-generation truck driver. My grandfather was too in New York. I am a little worried about the automation taking over, not now, but eventually, not for me, but for maybe other drivers that are just starting out now. And Andrew Yang was on Joe Rogan talking about it, and he gives it a very scary point, but also a huge point for us, just as a big part of the economy. Because if we stop, everything stops, in a couple of days. I just wanted to see your viewpoints on it, and do you understand what the basic moderate income thing was he was talking about?
Yeah.
Now, I'd just like to see you, I like everything you're talking about. You give me a sigh of relief, because everything else I'm seeing up here is very negative. We can't be so divided now. We gotta be stronger, get all together, and get this corruption out of here. And I appreciate you giving us some time. And I just wanted to give you a painting that I do as a hobby.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. You guys have a great day.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. This will hang in a place of pride in our home. It's beautiful. I'm familiar with the concept of universal basic income, guaranteeing an income to every single American. And I think it's an idea worthy of conversation and debate right now as we see more and more jobs being automated out of existence. And in your industry, you're looking forward to the day where long-haul trucking and long-haul truckers might be replaced by automated vehicles. We're not there yet. I don't know when we will arrive there. You know better than any of us in this room. And so I think given that fact, we should be following your lead. You should be able to describe the transition that's going to be best both for the industry, for the businesses that are involved, and for the people who create the value, the folks who literally bring our products to our homes or make sure that our lives are led better or that the American economy is really humming. What I've learned as well, though, is that we're creating far more jobs in this country today, many of them high wage, high skill, and high value, than we're able to fill. We have a skills and a training and an education gap in this country that is measured in the millions. And part of the thing that is standing in the way of filling that gap is the incredibly expensive cost of higher education and the diminishment of the power of unions in this country. So if we ensure that every single one of us at any age could go to community college for free. So you're graduating from high school, you're 18 years old, you should be able to go to community college. You're 45 years old and your job has been automated out of existence, you should be able to go to community college and learn the skills or the trade or receive the training necessary to be able to command a true living wage and fill one of those jobs that is unfilled today. By that same token, we should elevate the power of unions so that you can also choose to enter an apprenticeship where you will also learn a skill or a trade, and at no cost or debt to you. For life, you are guaranteed retraining by that same union if we give that union a fighting chance in this country. Right to work laws, and what we saw happen here in Iowa in 2017, which diminished the power of public unions, are going to make it harder for our fellow Americans to receive the training and the skills they need to lead a life of dignity, be able to take care of themselves and of their families. So broadly speaking, those are things that I want to be a part of doing in this country, but specifically to your industry and to your life and to your career, I want to make sure that I'm following your lead. So I'm going to ask Cynthia and our team to make sure that we get your contact information to find out how we meet that challenge specific to your life. Thank you for asking. Appreciate it. Thank you for coming.
Welcome to Southern Iowa.
Thank you for
I
having
like
us.
what I've been hearing, and you talk about the big money. How are you gonna get the big money like the Koch brothers out of things? They're strong.
Yep, you're right. So, two big surprises when I was first elected to Congress in 2012 and sworn in 2013. First big surprise, the folks that I met, Democrats and Republicans alike, pretty nice people, who campaigned their tails off to serve their constituents in Congress. And perhaps like me, taking 2 flights to get there every week, 2 flights home to see Amy and Ulysses and Molly and Henry. They're sacrificing to a large degree for their country. So what explains the outcomes, the dysfunction, and distrust that we have for that institution? It was a second big surprise. Most of my colleagues were spending at least half of every day on the phone, dialing for dollars to raise the money to ensure their re-election and the defeat of their colleagues who happen to be on the other side of the aisle, either to maintain or to win a majority. And those they're calling are those political action committees who represent the corporations, who have business before that member of Congress's committee of jurisdiction. So explain to me this. You and I, as federal taxpayers, invest in the cures and medications through the research and development that we fund federally, that are sold back to us at the most expensive prices on the face of the planet, and that is despite the fact that we buy in bulk from Medicare, Medicaid, VA, TRICARE beneficiaries. Why do we have the most expensive medications on the planet? It's because of those who can purchase access and influence and increasingly outcomes, literally by law preventing Medicare from using its leverage to bargain for lower prescription drug prices. Why in 2017 did the Congress pass a law that allows internet service providers to take your private internet browsing information and think of the weirdest places you've been online and sell that to the highest bidder without your permission or your consent? It makes no sense until you follow the money. Those political action committees employed by those internet service providers, literally paying members of Congress a legalized bribery, in other words, to do their bidding. So in our democracy reform proposal that I just described to you, we specifically exclude PACs from being able to participate in federal elections, but it's not enough to talk the talk, you've got to walk it as well. So for the last 5 years and counting, I've not accepted a single dime from a single PAC, no corporate help, no special interest influence, and in this campaign we are not taking money from lobbyists, and we've also signed the fossil fuel pledge so that there's no real or perceived conflict of interest as we meet the greatest challenge that this country and this world has ever seen. So let's do it by law, but first let's do it by practice in this campaign. That's how we do it. Thanks for asking the question. Appreciate it.
So we're gonna do 2 more questions and then we're gonna step out in the hall. It's a little cooler and we'll stay around and say
It's
hi.
full on summer in this room.
It is.
I feel it.
Cooler
I
in the
like
hall,
it.
so we'll step out in the hall in just a second.
This reminds us of El Paso.
I was just gonna say, probably because I drove in El Paso. Thanks for being here, both of you. I wanted to tell you, my son moved a little over a year ago from Ottumwa to El Paso.
Oh, wow.
And he loves it down there.
What's he doing?
He works at a call center, but if you need like any.
Get in touch with him in this tunnel.
Yeah, anyway, it's a really neat city, and we've been there a couple times, and actually was there when you did the March for Truth, when Trump was there, so I
Wow.
participated in that, which was really,
Thank you.
really cool.
Thank you.
Anyway, my question is one that I'm sure you've heard many times, student debt. So my other son told me, ask him about my crushing student debt.
Yeah.
And I've heard everything from refinance, student loans, which would help, but it's not huge, to free college tuition, you know, it's everything in between. So I wanna know what your stand is, and also, the other question that I think about is, how do we keep the cost of college from going so high?
Yes.
I'm sure when my husband went to college many years ago, it was a lot cheaper back then. So how do we hold the cost of college down and help relieve student debt? Thank you.
Thank you. I've learned a lot about this issue especially here in Iowa. And I've learned about it listening to public school educators, and I'll tell you the connection. I mentioned the 2017 law that now outlaws the ability for public sector employees to organize, including school teachers and public school educators. And it has produced a bumper crop of teachers for the state of Minnesota.
Yep.
You all paid to train them, to educate them. They were in your classrooms until we no longer supported them and had their backs. And now they're in a state where they're paid a true living wage because the teachers who remained here in Iowa far too often are working a second and a third job. And it's connected to your question in the following way. Not only is it the wages that they are paying, but it's the payments that are leaving their homes to pay down the student loan debt. If we think about it, we've asked teachers to take on debt, to borrow for the privilege of teaching our kids in that classroom. And something has to break. Putting food on the table, paying the note on the mortgage, paying the note back to your lender for your student loan debt. So here's our proposal. If you're willing to dedicate some part of your life to public service, to work in public school education, to fill one of the unfilled 45,000 clinical positions within the VA, take care of someone who put their life on the line for this country, serve in a in-demand profession in a small, underserved community that needs your lifeblood and vitality, then I want to wipe clean and clear your outstanding student loan debt, vastly increase the public service debt forgiveness program. And then I want to do this. If you don't participate in that program, at a minimum, I want to get the lowest possible interest rate that you can refinance down to, perhaps the interbank lending rate in the United States of America, so that that burden is a little bit more manageable. And then lastly, let's stop digging this hole. Let's make community college free, as I just described earlier, but let's also ensure that a 4-year degree is debt-free, and not just for tuition, but for books and room and board, the full cost to attend higher education in the country. And then the last question you asked, how do we keep these institutions from controlling the rate of inflation? We make this conditional. We'll invest more federally if states will do their part and if institutions will control the cost of tuition, room, books, and board. Then all of that will work out to make sure that the $1.5 trillion in outstanding debt comes down and we don't add more to it going forward. Thanks for asking the question, and I look forward to meeting your son in El Paso. Thank you.
Okay, that is it. We are going to step out in this very cool hallway.
Okay, thank you, Ottumwa, for having us out. We're going to step out into what Cynthia has described as a very cool hallway.